Well, hello, everyone. It is wonderful to see everyone on this Monday night. And we are going to talk about amends and how they fit into this program. So if you have your big book, we are on page 76, the third paragraph. So this is right after we've taken step 7. Okay, so we've admitted we're powerless over food, meaning that we can't control it on our own and that our lives are unmanageable. And then we turn our will and our lives over to a loving God who we've come to believe in. Then we've inventoried our resentments, our fears, our defects, our harms. We've asked God to remove our defects, and we've said a prayer asking Him to remove them. So after that, page 76, it says, now we need more action, without which we find faith without works is dead. That concept is throughout our big book. It's like the twin themes, faith and work, like hand in glove, they go together. Faith means I trust and rely on God, right? And the work part means I do His will as best I can and then let go of the results, leave the results up to Him. So, but I can't just say I trust and rely on God and I robbed a bank 3 years ago and I'm not going to pay it back. We can't do that. We've got to pay back what we've harmed, like set the scales right. Well, how come? How come we have to do that? So earlier on in this chapter, it says that we lead a double life. We have a stage character. We want to enjoy a certain reputation, but know in our hearts we don't deserve it. If I took 20 bucks from your wallet a year ago, am I ever going to be able to look you in the eye? Right? If I've been mean and nasty to people in my life, I can't just say, okay, let's start over today. And starting today, I'll be kind to people. I need to go back and fix my harms. It's like then we have to set the scales right. And then we're at the point, right? Remember one of the promises, we can look the world in the eye. So here we are. And so it says, let's look at steps 8 and 9. We have a list of people we harmed and to whom we're willing to make amends. We made it when we took inventory. Okay, so my sponsees, when they do their fourth step, they make a list of people they've harmed. And here's how I ask them to do it. Say, write who you hurt, what you did, how it hurt the person, what you should have done instead, and then leave the last column blank for your 8th step. So they've already looked at their harm. So here's some examples. Let's say Macy's. I harmed Macy's. I stole a shirt worth $50. How did it hurt them? They were out $50. And then when it comes to the amends section, remember, we want to set the scales right. So if they were out $50, I need to pay them $50. Now, sometimes our amends are we hurt people. So let's say we physically hurt someone. Let's say, who did I hurt? Joe. What did I do? I punched him in the nose. This is why I think the column, how did it hurt the person, is important. If I broke Joe's nose and he had a $5,000 doctor bill, well, then I owe him $5,000. If I didn't break his nose, but maybe I embarrassed him in front of his friends because he got punched by a girl, well, then my man needs to set that right somehow. So again, we want to think of what will set the scales right. Often, if we've caused someone stress, right? Like I know I caused my parents lots of stress, then our amends is to do something that alleviates stress in the person's life. So I remember one time I was like, I felt I was overly harsh on my daughter, right? Caused her stress. So I did something to alleviate stress. I did one of her chores for her, right? We want to set the scales right. So that's the goal. And it says when we did our inventory, we subjected ourselves to a drastic self-appraisal. Okay, these days, being hard on ourselves gets a bad rap, right? We call someone, especially, often our therapist, our spouse, the people in program who we know will enable us, and we say something and they say, "Oh, you're being too hard on yourself." Mm-mm. It says drastic self-appraisal, and I can be hard on myself. I can look at the ugly in myself because I've taken a third step and I've come to believe that God has my back. That's the beauty of these steps. They're in order. We don't do our inventory until we've come to believe in a loving God. Okay, so we took a drastic inventory and we looked at the damage that has accumulated. They said, out of our effort to live on self-will and run the show ourselves. So what causes harm and creates wreckage? Living on self-will and trying to run the show ourselves. If we want to see how am I really living on self-will and trying to run the show myself, then I would suggest to go to page, the pages in my book are coming out on the chapter how it works. The page that talks, I think it's 63, that talks about the actor. He is like an actor who wants to blah, blah, blah. Read those 2 paragraphs out loud, inserting your own name for actor. That's how we can see how we live on self-will and try to run the show ourselves. And then they tell us if we don't have the will to do this, if we don't have the will to go back to Macy's and pay them the $50, go back to Joe and apologize and give him the money that he had to spend in the hospital. It says, we ask until it comes. Who do we ask? We ask God. So whenever it says we ask and they're talking about God, it means pray. And then they remind us, they say, remember, it was agreed. You agreed at the beginning to go to any lengths for victory over alcohol, victory over food. They're reminding us because it gets hard here, right? You know, at the beginning, okay, we're writing our inventory, but we just read it to our very kind sponsor. Well, now we have to go back to the people we hurt. And they're saying, remember, you agreed to do anything so that you wouldn't eat again. And they say this because it's at this point, a lot of people walk away because they don't want to do this. But we are not going to be part of those people. We are going to be people who go through this because the rewards are so wonderful. So it gives us some guidance. It says, as we go through, we probably shouldn't emphasize the spiritual feature on our first approach. I love that. It implies that there's going to be a second approach and a third, that we're going to restore relationships. And on page 77, it says, no, you might prejudice them, right? If we come in and say, I've seen the light and I've found God, and here's the $20 I took from your wallet because I'm just such a holy person now I can't live with myself. We don't do that. We don't do that, okay? And it says, it might prejudice them, right? It's like, what? Then it tells us this, something I think is so beautiful, top of page 77. At the moment, we are trying to put our lives in order, right? Cleaning up our past. But this is not an end in itself. So the goal isn't to just put my life in order. Our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people about us. So at some point, we stop running from food and we're running toward an enhanced relationship with God and the ability to help others better. We stop running from and we start running toward. That's what we get this program. And it says, okay, but right now you're trying to clean up your past. So they give us some advice. Okay. It says, don't go and like claim I've got religion. It says the person is going to be impressed with a sincere desire to set wrong the right. I took $20 from your wallet. I owe you $20. And it says, we talk about God if it will serve any good purpose, and we use common sense. So what I always tell my sponsees is that when we make amends, we tell the person why we're doing it. I realize I'm a compulsive eater, I have an eating disorder, and I realized I could never recover until I set right the things I did wrong in my past. I worked a 12-step program, and I mean, everyone's heard of 12-step programs, and the ones that people generally have heard of is amends. So people will probably be familiar when we say that. But we say that so people know, again, we're not doing this because, we've seen the light. We're doing it to save our own skin. So, I'm working a 12-step program. When I went back through my life, I see that one of my harms was toward you. I did this. I'm so sorry. This is what I'm going to do to set it right. Here's the $20. Here's whatever it is. And then something I heard that I always liked is at the end to just say to the person, is there anything else I've done that you'd like to tell me? And whatever they say, we just listen or maybe say, I'm so sorry. They're very clear on page 77, under no condition, that means 0% of the time, do we criticize or argue. We simply tell them we will never get over drinking or binging until we've done our utmost to straighten out our past. We're there to sweep off our side of the street. Says, we never try to tell him what he should do. His own faults are not discussed. So I use this as a guiding principle, like if I'm sponsoring someone who's married and she's maybe saying, but my husband's doing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all wrong. And I tell them, until you've gone through the steps and you've made your amends, unless he's doing something dangerous, like leaving the baby in the bathtub and walking out of the room, you don't say anything. So when we make our amends, we don't criticize, we don't argue, we don't tell the other person what they should do, and we don't bring up their faults. When they say, and 9 times out of 10, the unexpected happens, right? Just feuds of years standing melt away. Sometimes people offer to help us. And it says, but it doesn't matter if someone throws us out of their office. And I did once have someone throw me out of their office when I went to make amends, but it's okay. I made the amend. We have to do our part, and whatever happens, happens. And then they talk very specifically about a couple things. One is creditors. It says we don't dodge our creditors. We tell them, again, compulsive eater, I can never recover until I make amends. Here's the money I owe you. If we don't have all the money right away, we make a payment plan. Here's $20. I'll give you $20 every week for the next 10 weeks until my $200 is paid off, or whatever. It's good to work it out with your sponsor. Very clear here. It says, we must lose our fear of creditors no matter how far we have to go, for we are liable to drink if we are afraid to face them. Liable to binge if we're afraid to face them. Okay, here is the worst possible thing that we can do for someone who is afraid to face their creditors or make an amends, because this person will get all the way to step 9 and then won't make that really hard amend and will binge. So what usually happens, the sponsor lets her go. The person starts working with a new sponsor all the way back to step 1. They go all the way to step 9. And then the person picks up again. And then what happens? Guess what? She gets another new sponsor and starts all the way over. That is the worst possible thing. If that is you, talk to your sponsor or talk to someone in recovery and get that amend made. I have at least one person on this line here who called me and said, I'm in relapse, I need help. Said, okay, well, I got up to step 9 and I said, okay, I'll help you. But before I do, you need to go make those amends. We have to make those amends. Okay, so we don't want, and again, this says, we are liable to drink if we're afraid to face our creditors. So sometimes it's something that we're not doing. It's not always, there's a first step problem. It's often something that we're not doing. Or here's what it really usually isn't. Ever hear people say, well, you just need another voice? I don't think I've ever said that to a sponsee. There's nothing wrong with my voice. There may be something wrong with her application of the program. So if we're sponsoring someone and she or he is picking up, so we need to see, are they willing to go to any lengths? Are they doing the work? If they're not, we don't say go find another voice. What I do is I point to page 58 where it says, if you've decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any lengths to get it, then you're ready to take certain steps. And I say, if you're not willing to go to any lengths, the book tells me I'm not allowed to sponsor you. And I don't just foist them off on someone who has more of a falsetto voice than I do. I don't do that. Okay, so then it talks about some sticky situation. What if we've committed a crime or we've cheated on our spouse? And again, it says reminding ourselves, again, they're telling us, remind yourself, you've decided to go to any length to have a spiritual experience. It says the first thing we do, we pray. And we pray very specifically for strength and direction to do the right thing, no matter what the personal consequences may be. This is how far they went. They said, we may lose our position or reputation or face jail, but we are willing. We have to be. We must not shrink at anything. But then they give a big caveat and they say, wait. Okay, other people are often involved. Don't be, page 79, don't be the hasty and foolish martyr who would sacrifice others to save yourself from an alcoholic pit. And, so they talk about someone who, a guy who had an ex-wife, he owed her money, he hadn't paid, he thought he might have to go to jail. Before he did anything, he prayed, he talked to his sponsor, he talked to his current wife. He was very careful. We don't want to just like barge in dangerously. But again, we don't want to fall off the bed on the other side and not take responsibility where we need it. So page 80, it says, before taking drastic action, which might implicate others, we secure their consent. So that's like, let's say my husband and I cheated on our income tax and we didn't, but just say we did. And I wanted to go confess to the IRS that, we lied and scammed them out of $100,000. Well, if my husband and I file a joint tax return, I would need to get his permission first. If he didn't give it to me, then I might need to make an indirect amends, like get a second job and make anonymous payments to the IRS. So we try and work these things out that we don't implicate others. But there's a really interesting story they give on page 80. A guy, he borrowed money from one of his friends, and then lied about it, said, I never took money from him. And that ruined his friend, his rival, totally, I guess, put him out of business. And now he's recovered and he's thinking, okay, if I confess this, I may lose my business. I'm going to be in trouble. But this is what he said. After consulting with his wife and partner, he came to the conclusion that it was better to take those risks than to stand before his creator guilty of such ruinous slander. So what does that tell me? A couple things that we don't, that slander is really bad. Like God takes that seriously, and we don't want to stand before him guilty of that. And then the man said, he saw that he had to place the outcome in God's hands, or he would soon start drinking again, and all would be lost anyhow. This is how seriously they took this program. Like whatever it takes to not drink again, or for us to not binge again. So he said he had to place the outcome in God's hands. Okay, well, how do we do that? How do we place an outcome in God's hands? I think we pray, we do what we think God would have us do, and then we can say, my creator, I surrender the results to you. I took the action I think you want, but whatever you do is fine. And I think not just with amends, but that's what we have to do in every aspect of our lives, right? Like, God, this is what I would like, but thy will be done. Whatever you want to do with this situation is fine. And that works with our relationships, with our health, with our career, with everything. We do what we think God would have us and leave the results up to him. And then they talk about someone who has cheated on their spouse, and they give some general guidance, but they really say, okay, if our wife doesn't know, should we tell her? And they say, not always. So they give some guidance, but they say there's no hard and fast rule. And I would just counsel anyone, if you're in that position where you've cheated on someone in a relationship, talk to your sponsor, talk to someone experienced in recovery, spend a lot of time in prayer before you make a decision about how to handle it, because those situations, are delicate. So we want to just use caution. Um, okay, page 82. So people talk about making living amends, right? So on this page, it says, sometimes we hear an alcoholic say the only thing he needs to do is to keep sober. And it says, certainly he must, for there will be no home if he doesn't. But he is a long way from making good to the wife or parents whom for years he has so shockingly treated. So then the concept came up somewhere, living amends. Okay, what is a living amend? So they're saying it's not just to stay sober or abstinent. So on pages 82 or 83, there were 6 things that I found, that should be part of making living amends. So number one, let the past stay in the past. If another person makes amends to us, apologizes to us, we don't bring it up again. Okay, let the past stay in the past. Number two, pray for the other person, keeping their happiness uppermost in mind. Pray for the other person's happiness. Okay. Number three, don't think that being sober or abstinent is enough, that's enough of a living amend. Well, I'm not binging anymore. There's your amend. It's not. It says, listen to what we do. We're like tornadoes, roaring our way through the lives of others. Hearts are broken. Sweet relationships are dead. Affections are uprooted. Selfish and inconsiderate habits have kept the home in a turmoil. So number four, start being unselfish and considerate, and see, what does that look like? Different for everyone. So for me, I hate to clean. I'm horrible at it. I hate doing it. So I set myself a timer every day except Sunday to do a certain amount of cleaning around my house, to do an unselfish and considerate thing that is difficult for me, but appreciated by my family. Okay, number five, don't criticize. On page 83, it says, we sit down with the family and frankly analyze the past as we now see it, being very careful not to criticize them. So we don't criticize them. And number six says, we ask each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindliness, and love. So that should be number 6, A, B, C, and D. Patience. That means I don't have to get everything I want when I want it. And I don't have to get people to change on my timetable. Tolerance. I need to develop a thicker skin and be able to put up with things that might annoy me. Kindliness. I think we all know what kind is. Just being kind, just being nice to the people in our family. And love. I think love entails, one thing it entails is self-sacrifice. Doing things for the other person that take effort on my part. Okay, and then it tells us The spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Unless one's family expresses a desire to live on spiritual principles, we don't urge them, but we have to live by spiritual principles. Okay, what are these principles? And the delightful Karen M., who is thankfully here tonight, once went through the big book and made a list of all the spiritual principles in the big book, and they are on our website. And so if Karen or someone can just throw that link into the chat. So we practice spiritual principles. And it says, okay, there may be wrongs we can't right. We don't worry if we could right them if we could. So some people can't be seen. We send them an honest letter. Okay, here's the order I think is best. First best is in person. If we can't do that, next best is like on FaceTime or Zoom so we could see each other. Next best is a phone call. And then under that is a letter or an email. But we want to try to have a conversation. One reason is it's harder for us. It's a lot easier to just shoot off a text or an email, but we're not in the business of making things easy for us. Okay, so in person, then like some kind of FaceTime, Skype, Zoom. Next is just a phone call, or then an email or a letter. And it says, we don't delay. We are sensible, tactful, considerate, and humble, but we're not servile or scraping. As God's people, we stand on our own feet. We don't crawl before anyone. I think what this means is once I make my amend, and while I'm making my amend, if that person wants to, say whatever they say, and then there may be more things they bring to my attention I need to fix. Once I've made my amends, it is done. The debt is paid, and I don't need to crawl before anyone. Now, that being said, if I've really hurt someone and they want to distance themselves from me for a while, I've earned that. If someone doesn't trust me, I've earned that, and I just have to live with it. Okay. And then we have our beautiful 9-step promises, the bottom of page 83. I think we've heard them read so often at meetings that it may be that we just don't think about how beautiful they are. If we are painstaking about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we are halfway through. Okay, painstaking, that means we're thorough about our work. This phase of our development and halfway through. Okay, does that mean halfway through our 9th step or halfway through the steps at step 4.75 or something? I don't know. I just say keep going. And the more you work this, the more promises you're going to get. We will be amazed, like delighted in a good way. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. Okay, remember at the beginning, we start getting freedom from food obsession. We get more new freedom and a new happiness. It's like our definition of happiness kind of gets redefined. So, at the beginning, how we all like hated to make those phone calls every day. And then you talk to someone who's doing in recovery, and you hear them say over and over, they're like the best part of my day, like a new happiness, getting a fellowship, getting connected with other people. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it, because the past is how we can help others. We will comprehend the word serenity, and we will know peace. Page 68 gives us, right, our formula for serenity. We trust infinite God rather than our finite selves. We realize we're in the world to play the role that God assigns, just to the extent that we do as we think God would have us and humbly rely on Him. Does He enable us to match calamity with serenity? We have a formula for serenity. We can be serene no matter what. It says, we will know peace. We will have peace, right? I don't know about y'all, but I didn't have peace before. I was the person who was always saying, like, why am I here, God? What's my purpose? What's my I have peace. Or I was the one when my kids were little looking up what high school or college, or what high school I was going to send them to. I don't do that now. I have peace. I don't need to know what the future holds because I know who holds my future, right? We know peace. No matter how far down the scale we've gone, we will see how our experience can benefit others, no matter how bad. Some of you have heard me say how I used to like take a razor and slash myself up and fake rapes. Well, wouldn't you know, I sponsored someone and she said, I used to do the same thing. I faked a rape. So our experience can help others. It's easier for people to do a fifth step with us when they've heard us share about, some of the not too cool things that we've done. The feelings of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. Well, how can we feel useless, right? When we're helping other people, when we're growing in our relationship with God, when our family lives are getting better, we're not useless. And there's no self-pity. It's replaced by gratitude. And if we are feeling self-pity, the antidote to that is gratitude. Just start making lists of all the things we are grateful for. Um, Self-seeking slips away. We don't care so much about getting things for ourselves just because we're happy with how our lives are going. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Different. We just see things differently. Fear of people and of economic insecurity will leave us. Note that doesn't say we will all be millionaires, but we won't be afraid of economic insecurity. We won't be afraid of people because what could anyone do to me, right? Like if we know God has our back, and if we mess up, Melissa and I have been doing this for 5 years, and everyone, I think like, gosh, what if sometime I say something that's like, or I make a joke that's like really offensive and people get upset, and then it's like, well, if I do, I'll just apologize and move on. Like, I don't worry about it. I probably will say dumb things at some point. Um, but you know what? Like, my heart's in the right place most of the time. And when it isn't, this program gives me a chance to fix it. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. We're able to pause and take a deep breath and ask God for the right thought or action. And we just kind of know what's the right thing a lot more than we used to. We will suddenly realize God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Is that crazy? God is doing for us. So here's just a little example that I had recently. So I had COVID and, oh no, I'll back up. So I see an immunologist twice a year just for something I have that's like pretty much in remission. And they called a couple months ago to reschedule the appointment. And it was inconvenient because now she didn't take people at a certain time. So it's like I had to, take half a day off work. It's like, okay, fine. So the appointment was rescheduled to last Friday. And I had COVID. And my breathing wasn't what it should be. My lungs weren't what they should be. And I went to her because I just happened to, I wouldn't have been able to get an appointment with her for months, but I just happened to have my appointment rescheduled to that day. And, she gave me the exact right medicine I needed to clear me up, which like my normal doctor had recommended something else. And she said, no, this is what you need. And, you know, worked really well. And I'm thinking, God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. Months ago, it was like God knew that I would have COVID, that I would need to see this doctor. So he arranged that my appointment was after I stopped being contagious so that I could go see her, but that I needed her. And like God just does for me what I can't do for myself. I couldn't have arranged that better. And I think if you talk to people who work this program, you'll hear stories like that over and over and over. That's just how we live. We rely on God. And it says, are these extravagant promises? Well, yeah, they're extravagant in the sense of being like overwhelming, amazing, wonderful, right? I mean, if you gave me like a mink coat, it would be extravagant. These are extravagant promises, But they say, I think they're talking about it in the sense of, are they extravagant as in like hard to believe? And they say, no, we think not. We don't think they are. They are being fulfilled. Who fulfills them? God, our loving creator. They're being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, maybe for some people it's at 4.5, sometimes slowly. They will always, always means 100% of the time materialize if we work for them. And those are like some of the beautiful promises of the program. And that is all that I have.